Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. Today we're gonna go through a step-by-step guide on how to create a macOS bootable USB drive, as well as all the BIOS settings, and as well as the installation. I'll show you the installation procedure of macOS Catalina as an example. So what we're gonna need to download some software that will let us download macOS, as well as edit config file like proprietary. This will be our plist editor, and we're gonna use git macOS to download the macOS operating system. And we're also gonna need an OpenCore bootloader package as well for our ACPI files. So let's do that. So first, download git macOS. Download the package. Let's put it on a desktop. Download proprietary, which is our plist editor. Let's save that on a desktop as well. Let's download OpenCore bootloader. Test release file. Let's create a folder, RC7.1, and copy the files there. Yeah, the files are there. Right, so now we have all the necessary software. We also need to have a USB drive, which is, well, at least 16 gigabytes in size. So, well, in this case, because we're gonna use a recovery image instead of the full OS image, because on Windows we have to use recovery image to create a USB bootable drive. Right, so now let's launch git macOS. Let's download the recovery image first. So let's launch this git macOS command. Right, now you will see all the images available to download, but these are full images of operating systems. We are gonna use a recovery image, which is, we have to toggle R in options, and now it will scan through all the available recovery images. The recovery image is usually small in size. It's usually around 500 megabytes. So we will need to be connected to the internet during the installation procedure, and we have to have a network kext in our EFI folder as well to finish the installation. So now in this case we're going to use like macOS Catalina image. We have to look at the images where it says full install. So in this case we're going to use the latest macOS Catalina recovery image, which is number 10 from the list. So let's enter number 10 and download the image. The images are downloaded in the same folder. It just creates a new folder called macOS downloads, and if you go into it, you will see that this is the image that's downloading at the moment. It's not going to take a long time to download, but I want to show, in this guide, I want to show all the processes that are involved into creating this USB drive. So let's wait until it finishes. In the meantime, we can look at the step. It's literally the step where you have to download all the necessary texts for your hardware. What I tend to do, I usually go to my motherboard website and see what are my peripherals. I mean, what are my sound drivers, what are the internet drivers, and so on. So my particular motherboard is Gigabyte Z170 Gaming K3. So let's go to Gigabyte Z170 Gaming K3. I'm gonna go through to the website and you'll see what are the right, so go to specifications. Right, so we have Z170 chipset. Right, our audio is Realtek, and this I will come to this in a moment. Our LAN driver is Atheros Killer E2400. So these two things we have to remember in order to download the proper texts. So let's go to OpenCore D'Artagnan guide, which is like a holy bible for OpenCore community. Let's go to OpenCore install. Right. And now if we go to gathering files, we'll see what files do we need in terms of drivers, in terms of texts. So now in terms of texts, we have to, these are the must-have ones. So we have to download Lilo and Virtual SMC. Let's download that. Virtual SMC as well. Download that. For the graphics, we're gonna use whatever green. So download that. Like I said, for the audio, because my codec is ALC codec, Apple ALC, we're gonna use this Apple ALC text for our audio. And Ethernet, we have the killer LAN card installed in the motherboard. So we're gonna use the what's called Atheros E2200 Ethernet text. If you have like Intel network driver, you have to use like Intel Mousy, or if you have Realtek Ethernet, you have to download this text. In our case, in my case, basically I have to choose this. Let's download that. Right, for some reason the operating system is stuck. Yeah, for some reason it's stuck downloading. Okay, let's try again. Let's delete that. Let's go to Get MacOS. Press R. Right, select number 10. Let's hope it downloads this time properly. Right, so the system will be downloaded here. This is the package. Right, so we have downloaded all the kexts that we need. So let's put all of them in on a desktop. Extract it. So yellow, whatever, green. Atheros Ethernet. Apple ALC. We don't need all of those. Right, okay. I think, right, so we have Lilo. Where's virtual SMC kexts? Virtual SMC kext. Here it is. Right, so that's that. That's Atheros. This will be this kext. Let's delete that. And Apple LC. Okay. So these are all 5 kexts we're gonna use. Right, so the operating system is downloaded, and it says that where it's downloaded. It will be in the same folder in Git macOS folder, macOS downloads, and public release. And this is the package that we're gonna use. Right, so now as we have that, let's plug in the USB drive and well, I have this plugged in. And now we're gonna use make install command from Git macOS folder to create a USB bootable drive. Okay, so this is my flash drive, Toshiba flash drive, and as you can see it says number 3. So now what we have to do, we're gonna use OpenCore. As you can see, this O, it's called 0, O, not 0 but O, and this is my USB drive. So what we have to do is to put a number of the USB drive and choose an option O, as we're gonna use OpenCore in this case, and press enter. Well, it will warn you that everything will be deleted from the flash drive, which makes sense. Select yes. Here it is. Now in this instance, it asks us the path, basically the path to the downloaded file, which is this file that we downloaded. This is the operating system recovery file. So what we do, go to view, okay, sorry, go to home and click copy path, and just right click on it and it copies that path into the terminal, into this window. Click OK, and now we just have to wait until the bootable drive is created. here it is. Even it does say that this may take some time. So okay, so in the meantime what we can do is to create our EFI folder, which will replace after the operating system, after this USB drive is created. So we're going to use our own EFI folder. So go to the go to open core file that we just downloaded. Let's grab the EF file from here, which will have all the structure that we need. From the docs folder we have to copy the sample config, and we just call it config. This will be our plist file. Let's do that so it shows all the extensions, file name extensions. Here it is, config.plist file. So in drivers, basically this is ACPI files where we have to open the OpenCore guide, and we'll see what ACPI files we need. So let's do that. So OpenCore guide. Let's open the guide. So in my case, I have a Skylake system. So let's do something like this. Right. So let's start and go to Skylake, because my system is Skylake. So as you can see in ACPI files, it will show what ACPI files we need. This is the SSDT plug and SSDT EC USB-X. We can find those in OpenCore docs, ACPI files, and binaries. As you can see, all these .aml files are listed here. So we just select the ones we need. This is this one, and plug file. Right, so copy and paste. Right, so we have all the files in ACPI. Now in terms of drivers, for the very basic installation, we need a HFS plus file and open runtime file. All the other files we don't really need. If we want to have a graphics, like a graphics interface, so we have to leave that open canopy in there. But for this purpose, we're gonna use just those two files in this case. Right, so these are the drivers that we need, and I think if we go to, I think this will be mentioned somewhere in the guide, that what the drivers. As you can see, FHS Plus and Open Runtime are the required drivers. So HFS Plus and Open Runtime. Right, Kext, we're gonna use all these Kext that we downloaded. So I'll just drop them there. Resources, we're not gonna use any of the nice graphic user interface or anything like that. In tools, we can delete everything from here. Right, so our EFI folder. Right, so ACPI is done, drivers done, Kexts are done as well. Right, now as you can see, our USB bootable drive is finished. So now just come back and close, and now if we go to Explorer, we're gonna see that this is our EF file, and this is like a standard EF file, which we replace by this file that we just created. So we can easily delete that and just drop it there. Right, no, we can delete that. Right, so we have that EF file. Now we have to edit our config plist. This procedure probably will take more time than you would expect, but we're gonna go through this. Right, so let's open Core Guide again. Right, so Skylake system, and this is the config file. Right, so now we're gonna use the proprietary plist editor to actually write all these drivers, all the SCPI files, and all the kexts into our config plist folder. We're gonna use the function of the plist editor, which is called OC snapshot. So let's do that. This is like a standard config file which is not edited, but now we're gonna use our specific kexts to put into this config file. So let's do that file, OC clean snapshot, and we have to point it to the EF file folder and OC, and click select folder, and as you can see, all the for example ACPI files are written that suits our EFI folder. Right, so let's edit that. So now let's go through the guide and just see what we got. Right, so let's do that. Collection, then it will be easier for us to. Okay, so now ACPI folder, right? So we have to have that and that, like this, right? So we have that ACPI add, and we have two SSDTs plugged and USB X, right? Now, okay, go to booter section. Now in booter section we have to go to quirks and try to compare what we got in our config against the guide. So right, so we have runtime frag true. I think all of these settings will be the same as per guide, because for the Skylake system it's just, it goes by default. Everything, all the settings are the same, really. Right, so quirks are done. Quirks are the same. Now we have to go to device properties, add. In this instance, this particular entry is your audio device. So for the time being, we're going to use layout ID 1, but according to your codec, this may change to other layout IDs like 1, 3, 5, etc. It depends what codec you got, and the codec is determined. Basically, the codec is in your you can find your codec in this in your motherboard manual, which in my case is Realtek ALC 1150. So if I copy that, and if we Google Apple ALC supported codecs. If we Google this, this will, if we find minus ALC 1150, oh, for some reason it's not on the list. That's strange. Oh, here it is. Right, so in my case, if my layout ID 1 doesn't work, I can change to 2, to 3, to 5, to 7, to 99, and just see if it works, really. If 1, it doesn't work. But in case, we just leave this at 1. So, right, so let's go to, so now we are in device properties, right? So, also in this case where it says add your iGPU, in my particular system doesn't require any entries in terms of iGPU, because whatever green text just takes care of it. So we don't need to add that in my case, but in your particular case, you may need to follow this guide and add this this entry. I will show you how to add it. So if you right click on the add and just just select new child and just copy the and just copy this file, change to dictionary, and you have new child, and just add those, like a Apple IG platform ID, Control V, for example. When the first option is when your iGPU is used as a main graphics card, so you have to use that. In my case, I have Radeon RX 580, so in my case I only need to add that. So okay, let's add that. So it's data and Control V. Right, so we added that device ID for the iGPU. But in my case, I don't really need to add it because it works automatically, but let's just keep it for the sake of following the guide. Right, so we finished with the device properties. Let's go to kernel. In kernel, the most important parts are to check whether our texts are properly written, which is in our case, as you can see, the Atheros text, and Lilo text is the second one, the Atheros text is the first one, and this is incorrect. So basically what we have to do, because the most important text, the order text have to go are as follows. Basically, the Lilo text have to be the first, the second text have to be virtual SMC, and the third text have to be whatever green. This is the order how the texts are loaded, and all the other texts except for the Lilo are all dependent on the Lilo plugin. Basically they are dependent on the Lilo text. So Lilo have to be loaded first, and all the other ones loaded after. Right, so we took care of the add section, right? So now go to quirks. In quirks, we have to just follow the guide, and if you have an option to disable CFG lock in your BIOS, then you can select this option to false. but if you can't, just for the time being, just enable those two options. At the very moment I have macOS Monterey installed as well, so I'm not going to do that because my BIOS settings are set to my CFG lock is disabled, so I just leave them to false. Right, Lapid kernel panic is set to false, as it says here. Panic no cache dump is set to false. Let's set it to true. Set it to true. Third-party drives, I tend to enable it because this is the this is required for trim to be enabled. Right, so do that. Oh, I think we forgot. Oh no, it's gonna work on this because we're installing Catalina. If we were to install Big Sur, the latest Big Sur or Monterey, we would need to add another kext like USB inject all, which injects the USB ports. Otherwise, your USB peripherals won't work during installation. Because it needs to be mapped first, but we're not going to go through this process today because we install Catalina. It's going to be alright. Alright, so we set the quirks, everything else just leave it as is. Now go to miscellaneous, and miscellaneous go to boot. Leave those settings to by default. Now in the book section we can enable those. I tend to leave those disabled because I don't need to debug, but right, that's that. Oh no, just because I don't need to debug anyway. So let's disable the security. This is the important one. In security we have to enable NVRAM reset because sometimes we need to do that. Allow set default, set it to true as well. All these other options are fine except for the vault. We have to set it to optional and scam policy to 0. I also secure boot model, I leave it, I set it to disabled, even though we can set it to default. The next section we're going to look at is the NVRAM. So if you can see, the only thing we have to change here are the settings under this third option under add section. What's important are the boot arguments, which is they're all described here in the guide, but the main ones I use are -V, especially for the first boot, which enables the verbose mode. So you can even, I mean, if you're stuck somewhere in a booting process, you will see where you're stuck, and this will kind of guide you to the direction what things you have to sort out to boot properly. The second thing is enabling or disabling SIP, which is in my case it's set to 000, all zeros, because its SIP is enabled. And this third option is English language of the installer. So this what you have to change if you're using like default open core sample config. So okay, so we're done with NVRAM. The next section is platform info, where if you look at the guide, the main thing you have to change is the everything, well, under generic section. So the most important one is to set your SM BIOS correctly. I have mine is set to 19,1 iMac 19,1 just because I have a 9700K CPU, which is and this SM BIOS is the closest to the CPUs used in the real Macs. The other thing is that you have to change, and this can be done automatically using the GenSM BIOS app. You can do it after you install macOS, because it only runs on macOS. So these are the sections that will change. Is LMB, ROM, system serial number, and system UUID. These are the most important ones to change after you install operating system. Before you install the operating system, make sure you have this set correctly. Right, now if we go to UEFI, the things I look at is the driver section. I want to make sure that my FHS driver is loaded in the first place and all the other drivers are loaded after. So in this case everything's fine. In quirks, request boot var routing have to be set to true. And also with, if let's say if you have a like Haswell CPU, ignore invalid flex ratio have to be set to true, but that's only for the Haswell generation. And I think that's about it when it comes to config. So you save it, and then we will go to the BIOS and see what BIOS settings we have to change in order for us to properly install macOS. You can read up about the BIOS settings in a guide in the Intel BIOS settings folder. So you have to disable or enable as much as you can find in your BIOS, really. The most important ones probably would be the secure boot, disabling the secure boot, serial port, CSM, that's that. Well, fastboot I think is disabled by default, but, and enabling, this is very important for me, above 4G decoding. XHCI handoff should be set to enabled, and also choose Windows 8.1.10 UEFI mode, as you will see in when we go to the BIOS settings. Okay, so let's go to the BIOS settings and see what we're gonna change there. Okay, now we're booting to BIOS, and hopefully you can see it well enough. Okay, so in BIOS we have to change certain settings. Basically, the first thing I do is I set my USB bootable macOS USB bootable drive as a boot option 1. Then fast boot is disabled. Then Windows 8 10 features I set it to Windows 8 and 10 WHQL. CSM support I set to disabled. This is literally per D'Artagnan guide. Secure boot I set to disabled as well. Then we go to another section. In peripherals, I set above 4G decoding I set to enabled. Then Super I/O configuration serial port is set to disabled. USB configuration XHCI handoff is set to enabled. In SATA configuration, SATA mode is selected as AHCI, and VTD is disabled. internal graphic I set to enabled because I want to use my iGPU as an accelerator. And that's about it. We can save it and reboot, and we'll try to get to the installer and install Catalina. Okay, so we choose the first option, which is called macOS based system, and we will boot from our external USB device. Don't worry if sometimes the lines get stuck at certain points for a couple of minutes or sometimes even longer. Just leave it until it eventually goes past those lines. And here it is. This is our Catalina installer is booting up. Well, I don't know if you see it. We're gonna be better like this. No? Yeah. So now we have to go to disk utility. Choose continue. Make sure over here you select view and do a show all devices. Well, in your case, well, I do have Catalina installed here, but I will erase it. But in your case, if let's say you only have one drive, then you just select that drive you want to format, click erase, and then choose a name, the format, which is it's either macOS extended journal or APFS. APFS is a newer file system. It's more designed for the SSDs and newer devices. So if you have an SSD, select APFS there. And very important to select GUID partition map and then click erase. What I'm gonna do, because this is I created like a partition for my Catalina installation in that drive, so I'm just gonna erase it, and as we can do it as a APFS, so it doesn't really matter. But okay, so we can erase it, and we're gonna install Catalina here. So now close disk utility, select reinstall macOS, select continue, continue, select agree, select your formatted drive, and then click install. This type of installation, because we're using a recovery image, it's going to take a while to install, because the recovery image is not like a full OS image, so this will download certain files during installation, and as you can see at the moment it does show 1 hour and 10 minutes remaining, which is quite a long time to wait until the OS is installed. But this is what we do if we create USB bootable drive with GIP macOS on Windows. Basically, if you create a bootable drive in macOS, it's the whole another story. It's much quicker, and you actually can create a full offline installer USB drive. So basically it will reboot several times, and you will be able to boot into your Catalina. So hopefully this guide was helpful. Any questions, please leave a comment below. I will upload this USB EFI partition, basic EFI folder, to the and paste it to the comments below. Okay, so hopefully you like it, and see you next time.